Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Contractor Evolution. This is episode 3 of the Wealth Builder series. On the last episode, we talked to Kyle Green about all things real estate financing. And this week, we're going to speak to another fantastic guest about the investment side. Justin Bontkes is the founder and principal of Caliber Projects, a construction management and general contracting firm working on some of the most exciting real estate developments in British Columbia. In many ways, Justin is the perfect case study for how contractors can build wealth through real estate investment alongside their core operating business. Like a lot of you, he started on the tools, worked his way into project management, then started Caliber, and in just 14 short years, Justin has gone from a bags-on framer, flipping houses on the side, to leading Caliber's team of 85 and building over $150 million in low-rise and high-rise projects in 2023. Through a dedication to constant learning and an eye for undervalued real estate, Justin has grown an award-winning company and amassed personal wealth, security, and freedom for himself and his family. And in today's conversation, Justin breaks down why, for contractors at least, the concept of diversification might actually be a bit overrated, how to avoid killing the golden goose by taking your eye off the ball with your core operating business as you endeavor into real estate. And lastly, he takes us through his personal investment strategy, how he analyzes land deals, and where he seeks to add value to properties and force their appreciation. So without further ado, let's dive in with Justin.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Justin, it's so good to finally have you on Contractor Evolution. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So listen, you are a former Breakthrough Academy member. We worked together for a few years, a number of years ago, and your journey, both on the construction side and the real estate side has been a really interesting one with a ton of growth. I think it'd be good for our listeners for you to just maybe lay out kind of your story, day one to today.
There you go. Day one to today. Well, I'll go back to sort of what I thought I was going to do coming out of high school, because I think a lot of us as contractors kind of have an idea what we want to do, but we don't really actually know. And we start trying out a few things, and then we kind of get pushed in a direction. And I think for me, coming out of high school, I always thought I was going to be a tradesman. I wanted to work as a carpenter. Thought one day, I'd own my own business as a framing contractor and kind of work in the trades. And, my dad said to me, he's like, well, that's fine. You can do that, but you need to go get a degree first, which was, really good advice. I didn't want that, of course. I just wanted to go work, make lots of money, buy cool cars, and, do all the things that, kids
Pretty
do.
typical.
But, I received some sage advice from my father. And so I ended up going to BCIT, did the Architectural Building Engineering Technology program. Finished that after 2 years, and so I'm 19, just about 20, finishing that, and realized that I'm still just a kid. So I ended up going back to BCIT the following September and enrolled in the construction management degree program. And so finished the degree program. It's a little bit longer than the year takes a little longer, and there's some extra courses and stuff. So it's not quite a 4-year degree, but just over 3 years, and finished that up and did some traveling, did the same thing that, again, most kids do, and come back and got back into Vancouver in December. And it's December, and I'm framing. I'm up on a roof, putting the sheeting on a garage, and it's -2 and it's raining. And like that doesn't happen anywhere but in the Fraser Valley. Because, normally it'd be snowing and then we'd have to go home. Right. And
the weather is uniquely disgusting in this part of the world.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I'm just back from, touring Southeast Asia and, not used to this cold weather. I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. So that night, I came home and I was looking online at different job applications, and there was a position as a project manager for a townhouse site in Abbotsford. So I grew up in Langley here in the Fraser Valley. Abbotsford's not too far away. And, so I'm a 21-year-old kid. The application says 5 years of project management experience and all this stuff. And I'm like, whatever, I'll apply for it. Applied for it, got the job. Didn't have a clue what I was doing as far as project management went. I knew how to do construction, but more on the the hands-on side of things. But I just really quickly learned to use the skills that I had as a tradesman and what I learned in school, and was able to take on the role and do really well with it. And you kind of progress from there. And it's building a townhouse site, and then you're doing 2 townhome sites at once. And
when did you guys start Caliber Projects?
So I would have started that in 2009. So really quickly from working for somebody. So I spent a couple of years working for another business, which was actually really good because you learn the good and the bad and kind of how you want to build your own business. And then in 2008, we had the subprime mortgage crisis, right? So for those of you in the US, it hit you a whole lot harder than it did in Canada. But basically what happened, I got laid off from my job in 2008. Couldn't buy a job for the rest of that year, and then early into 2009. So what I ended up doing is I took advantage of some low priced building lots. So I was able to find a partner, someone who had some money, who kind of believed in what I was doing, and we ended up buying 3 single family home lots. So I was the architect, I was the project manager, I was the working with the realtor. I was the carpenter, the laborer, everything, building these 3 homes. And by the end of 2009, the market had come back. So established Caliber in 2009. Built a few homes. Got really lucky with how the market changed for us. I did really well on those homes, and sort of started out from there. Just me and a pickup truck, and building homes, and finished those 3, and built a couple more, started doing some renovations. You build your own house, and you go from there, and so those are sort of the humble roots.
And fast forwarding to today, so it's like December of 2023. This is 14 years later. Do you want to maybe just talk about the size, the scope, the scale, the shape of Caliber Projects in terms of the type of stuff you're doing? If you can share like some of the revenue you guys pump out, how big your team is, just maybe give the audience a bit of a sense for what you guys are up to 14 years later. Started with a couple homes that you bought after 08, and now what you're up to.
Well, Benji, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Hey?
You're
so I can tell you
right.
all I want, but it might not actually be all that good. So when I was working for someone else, we were doing larger projects, and I really enjoyed sort of the aspect of running with a big team, and the multifaceted construction design and build approach. And when I was working on my own, when I first started out, it was just single family homes. It was really simple. Nothing too complicated. And what I realized is actually that I'm not actually that good at carpentry. I'm not really a tradesman. I'm more of a high level visionary business guy. And you don't really realize that until you start. You step into the waters of investment and trying to build a business. And so from 2009 to today, you start out small, but I just wanted to get back into the bigger projects, right? So started working as a general contractor myself. Building for other people, right? People were like, hey, you're kind of good at this. Like, why don't you do some stuff for me? And, the projects just gradually grow, right? From small to big. And so obviously starting from nothing in 2009 to where we are today, we got 85 employees. And in 2023, we will probably do about $176 million worth of construction.
And what kind of stuff are you guys primarily building these days?
So most of what we do now, and it's just a function of a finite resource, which is land. They're not making any more of it. So what's happened for us is we've just begun to densify. So rather than building, one home on a 1 acre lot, we're now building, low rise and high rise product, where we're building, anywhere from 100 UPA and up. So units, homes per acre is what we call it. So the homes are a lot smaller, but there's a lot more of them, and you're building a much more complex product for sure.
So you're kind of a perfect case study then. That's why we're having you on, to really talk about this really complementary relationship between being a contractor, being a blue collar entrepreneur of some sort, whether that be a bona fide GC or you're a painting contractor or a specialized trade, whatever, and real estate. And I just want your take on this very sort of general open-ended question. Why do you think that these two things go hand in hand so well? Why are they so complementary?
Yeah, well, so the beauty of building homes for other people is you get to, I always say, a smart person learns from other people's mistakes. A smart person learns from their own mistakes. A really wise person, really smart person learns from other people's mistakes, right? So I like to say I get to practice on other people's homes, right? So, when it comes to real estate development and what we're trying to do ourselves, we're taking all the information that we're gathering from what other people are doing. And so, early on when we were building single family homes for other people, we were also, buying lots and building homes ourselves and selling them. And so you get a sense of what works well and what doesn't work. And because you're doing it for other people, you're also, working at scale, right? So you're able to bring on and attract larger subtrades that would normally not do work on, work for a developer that's just doing one home at a time, right? So you're able to sort of build off that scale of economy. And I think too, like, it's either in you or it's not. Like some people are just really interested in product. And so for me, having that sort of understanding of how, a project comes together, but also being really interested in the product itself, I love building stuff and I love putting it together and I love seeing it, come together. And, in order to do what we were trying to do, we had to make money at it too, right? So, we're all in business to make money. It doesn't mean that we're, it's all about that. But, for me, I was able to take what I was learning and I was able to add that to, the wealth that I had created and build and sell homes for other people while building and selling homes for myself. And, you're able to do that. So there's kind of two ways, right? You talk about how we get started with it. I mean, a lot of it comes down to just working on our own homes, right? So, we buy a home for ourselves, we renovate it, we flip it, right? And we're able to add sweat equity to that process. And you're able to, you live in the product that you build. So you're able to assess it at a different level than you would be otherwise. And, and you got to enjoy it too, right? Like if you don't like doing it, you're probably not going to be very successful at it. So,
but there's something about, I think, the network that a contractor has, the tools that they have in their possession, the team that they've built, the knowledge that they have in their head, some of the propensities and skills are like really set them up to add that sweat equity in a more efficient and more effective way than, say, a doctor or just some other type of role in the economy. It's like there's something, you're uniquely positioned to do this well. It doesn't mean that you necessarily should or you necessarily will, but you do have some assets. You have your delta hand that makes you, I think, especially competent in this little vehicle, should you want to do that, right?
Yeah. So, the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? So, as someone who's in the trades, if you've got a little project that you're working on yourself, you're able to leverage those relationships, right? And depending on what it is, right? Especially early on, it's like, hey, if you're a landscaper, and your buddy's a carpenter, you're not necessarily trading work for work, but you definitely are understanding, what it takes to make it work. And so you're going to leverage those relationships. And, if like you said, a doctor goes and builds a house on his own, he's got to hire a general contractor. Yeah. That general contractor is going to hire, trades at full price. And, before you know it, you're paying significantly more than if you're doing it, yourself as a tradesperson. So yeah, absolutely. Like sweat equity is huge.
So, this is an interesting question. This is a part of a longer series, and we've had some investment people on. I think we're going to have a few more on after this. And there's competing philosophies when it comes to wealth building. A lot of people will be very pro diversification. It's like, get your money into stocks and bonds or both, load up a mutual fund, load up your RRSP, have it be, own assets in different geographies at different market cap sizes. And I think that there's merit to that idea, but there's also this scrappier, more DIY route to wealth building. And I wonder what, I mean, I can kind of assume based on your story, but like, what is your thought on that sort of diversification piece?
It's a great question, Benji. So I'll start off with it depends. It depends on where you're at in your journey, right? Like when you talk about being scrappy, and a lot of times when we're scrappy, it's like, you're bootstrapping, you're doing everything you can just to survive. You don't have a lot of money, so what value are you able to add? You're able to add hard work and sort of the skills that you have. And so early on for me, you're just flipping dollars is really all you're doing, right? Like you do one project, you take the money that you made, you put it into another one, you flip it, and you keep on turning it as many times as you can until you have a bit of an asset. And while you do that, and depending on the stage of your life and the dependence that you have, you have to be there is some prudence in how you sort of behave with that, and making sure that you have some cash left over for a rainy day, or making sure that you have a decent life. What do you call that?
A lifestyle.
Oh, no, life insurance. There you go. Life insurance. Making sure you got a decent life insurance policy, right? I mean, the last thing you want to do is over leverage everything that you have for the future, right? So, but what happens when we do create a bit of cash and we do have the opportunity to invest in different things? I think there needs to be a shift in how you behave. And from my perspective, with regards to 401k, RSPs, mutual funds, playing in the stock market and things like that. I always say, don't invest in things that you don't know, right? Make sure you put your money in areas of expertise that you are familiar with. And for me, putting money into an RSP, yeah, there's some tax benefits to it. But where do I go from there? I put it into a mutual fund where a fund manager, goes and manages it for me, and he takes a couple of points, and before you know it, the return is pretty dismal. So from my perspective as a business owner, especially because we're able to do some, there's some creativity in how you do it from a tax perspective, I'd strongly encourage you to invest in yourself, invest in whether it be your business or in real estate that you can tangibly build up and improve. And so from my perspective, like you really want to be careful that you're not, giving away the opportunity to grow your own wealth. Now, again, there's prudence in that. Like, don't leverage every last dollar that you have within your organization. I mean, you need to have, the necessities to operate. But, if you really think about it, you probably do a much better job of creating wealth yourself than you would by giving it to a mutual fund advisor.
When you leave the ball in your own hands, and there is some prudence and there is some, some thoughtfulness around how much risk you take and all that stuff. But if you leave the ball in your own hands, you're making the case that you can outperform the market year over year because you can kind of pump it with your own work ethic, your own smart, intelligent decision-making, your own network, the momentum that all that builds. And so you're kind of making the case that diversification is a little overrated when it comes to contractors building wealth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up diversification. I mean, diversification there is wisdom in that, right? You probably read any investment textbook and they're going to tell you not to put all your eggs in one basket. Again, just coming back to that, don't invest in things that you don't understand. If you can invest in something that vertically integrates with your business and it's somewhat diversified, great. But, if you're a contractor and you don't know anything about the retail business, don't get involved in retail. Right. Besides the fact that it will take away from what you're good at, right? I mean, you're going to end up spending time in this retail business that you don't understand anything about. It's going to take you away from your primary vehicle where you've actually, you're good at. I really caution people from, this diversification strategy that would have you putting, money into all sorts of different things. And, because you end up being spread too thin. And when you're spread too thin, what ends up happening is you end up starting to actually focus on the things that aren't going well, right? So if you got a really good contracting business, and then you put some money in a commercial business of some sort or retail business of some sort, and the retail's not going well, all of a sudden you're spending more time on your retail business than you are on your contracting business, which is what helped you generate the wealth in the first place.
This is a great segue into something that you said last week offline when we were chatting, which is this idea of like really keeping your eye on the ball, even when it comes to investing in real estate. And I wonder if maybe you want to unpack that idea a little bit for us. Like, what have you seen in terms of contractors taking their eye off the ball and maybe getting ahead of themselves a little quickly?
Well, the beauty of having worked with Breakthrough Academy, for me, I started off this journey when I was, obviously in my early 20s, and I didn't know anything about building a business at the time, right? And so, you get involved with Breakthrough Academy, and they give you the tools that you need in order to be able to run a proper business. And for myself, the last, whatever that is, 14 years. You're just hustling. You're just giving her like day in and day out. And, you might take a couple of breaks here and there, but, for the most part, you're just giving her every day. And I think what happens with a lot of contractors is through their journey, they eventually they do make it and they do build some wealth, and they get to a point where they're like, well, I'm going to put some people in charge of running my business, and I'm going to step away and I'm going to start, investing in different things and what ends up happening, and I think part of it is because guys get burnt out. They've worked for a very long time at something, and the thought of continuing to do what they're doing at the level that they're doing it for the next 20 years is it's too much for them, and they're like, well, I want to try something new, right? So they put their money into something else, and they put people in charge of the business, and they take their eye off the ball, and it doesn't usually last long, right? Like I think you talk about investments, what we've done that's given us success so far. Like we can't lose sight of that. Like we don't want to lose sight of where we came from, right? And I shared this with you, Benji. When you lose sight of where you come from, you often get lost, right? So, we're talking about investing, but that doesn't mean pulling out tons of cash from your business, pulling out tons of resources, and specifically pulling yourself out of the business. What I'm talking about is making sure that the existing business, we'll call it the golden goose, the one that got you where you are, that you continue to take care of it and that you continue to build it so that, it continues to generate cash. And, when you're talking to different bankers about, investing in things, they're going to look at your balance sheet. They're going to look at your income statement from your business. And if they see a cash flowing business that's, stood the test of time, that's going to help you when it comes to pulling out cash. The other beauty with it too, right? Like we're talking about investing for the future. If you're able to build your brand as a company, as time goes on, the company becomes the product. It's not so much what you're building anymore or what you're putting together. It's the actual business. And as time goes on, you're able to sell off parts of that, or maybe you sell the whole thing to somebody else at some point. And, you talk about wealth generation. It's a great way to do it.
I think it's a really, really important point, and we're going to talk about strategies, how you think about deals, the stuff you buy versus the things you don't buy. All of that we'll get into here in a sec. But there's a caveat at the beginning, which is just like, don't abandon the thing that got you to where you are right now because you listen to some real estate investment podcast, you saw a friend get really rich doing this or whatever. Because it appears as though those moments really come back to bite you quite quickly. And yes, you may have, you go and let's say buy 3 rental properties and you're feeling pretty good. And then the GM that you put in place in your business 18 months later, turns out he's a bit of a quack. And this whole thing is now nearing bankruptcy. I mean, in the BTA universe, we've just seen this dozens, if not hundreds of times at this point. And so I think it's like, this is all exciting. It's very cool and it's very fun. And you get to kind of put your real estate investor hat on. Don't do this in too cavalier a fashion, and don't forget about like what you said. Like don't forget where you came from.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, what kind of things? If you're thinking like, here's a question: someone's listening to this, and they're maybe they find your story inspiring, or this maybe fits a narrative or a future that they see for themselves. Are there things that you could maybe speak to about like what would make someone ready to do this in terms of their business? Like, does the business need to be at a certain size? Does there need to be a certain amount of free cash flow? Does there need to be, a certain amount of a leadership team built so that the owner has bandwidth needed to do this? I mean, how does someone know they're ready to maybe take this on?
Well, I think it starts with understanding what your personal vision is, right? So, you guys at Breakthrough talk about the painted picture, right? You want to draw for yourself what your envisioned future looks like, right? And I think if you have a clear vision of what the future looks like, you want to build towards that. And if you're saying to me, hey, you know what, I want to get involved in real estate investment and I want to do, have, X number of investment properties or X value, a portfolio or whatever it might be, you don't just start that overnight. It's a process where you build it up, right? So, and you really got to look at, what's your personal situation look like too, right? Like how, do you have children? What are the ages of your children? What type of draw will they have on you? Are you able to work, 50, 60 hours a week? Or is it, hey, you know what, like I can only do 40, 50 hours a week because, my life circumstances don't allow me to do that. And so depending on what your life circumstances will allow you to do, you start making decisions on what you can do outside of that with your business, your operating business, and then investments, right? Because I've seen too many guys, again, that are running an operating business and it's doing well, but it requires a lot of their time. Then they buy a piece of land. They don't do proper due diligence because they want to do it so badly. And before you know it, they bought something that doesn't actually cash flow or doesn't have any potential. And now they're sitting on a lemon. And I'll tell you, like if you buy the wrong piece of land, it can put you back years, right? I mean, think about how long it's taking you to generate wealth within your business. If you take that wealth, put it into something and it's stuck there for, 5, 6, maybe more years, that's not going to work out that well for you either. So I just really would encourage anybody who's looking at doing this to make sure that you actually have thought through how you're going to allocate the time required to do this. Yeah. Because, it can be all encompassing. And before you know it, like, you've got this asset, you've got this business, and now, instead of you running your business is running you. And it takes all the fun out of it. Like, it's got to be fun. I think maybe that's something that we haven't focused enough on, Benji. It's, wealth is good. But it can be a blessing and a bane. Like it can be a real problem for those that don't know how to manage it properly. And, there's so many people, there's so many relationships that we have that have fallen apart over the years simply because we haven't managed our time properly. And we've actually put our businesses and our investments ahead of, what's really important in our lives. Right. So just something to keep in mind, when you're thinking, you want to do this.
That's a really great point. Give us a high-level walkthrough of your investment strategy and like what has worked for you over the last decade. I mean, you talked about buying the wrong piece of land and that being that's something that can really set you back, sitting on a lemon. I mean, that probably fits somewhere into your answer. Just what is sort of like the Justin Bontkes approach to this whole exercise?
Yeah. So for me, because I'm a contractor, and I talk about being vertically integrated with what we're doing, for me, the investments that I have had to date typically have me improving the land, right? So I'm buying a piece of land or I'm buying a house, I'm renovating it or I'm building a new place and then I'm selling it, right? So again, we talk about that vertical integration. If you're a contractor and you can add value to a home, might make a ton of sense for you to buy something that, if you're a finishing carpenter and the finishing carpentry in the home that you're buying is really poor, great. You can add that value, and then you can flip it or you can, hold on to the asset. For me, and I do think it depends a little bit on the geography, right? So I'm here on the West Coast, to buy a piece of land, especially in a high interest rate market, to buy a piece of land and have it cash flow is almost impossible right now. With interest rates being what they are. I mean, the bank ends up making more money than you do on the thing. So for me, my strategy over the last 10 years has been to buy, build, and sell. Now I'm, transitioning in my career now where, looking more intently at buying something where I can hold it, have income producing properties. And so that will happen in tandem where I continue to buy build and sell. But I think, if you can turn your cash and turn it quickly, there's always going to be value in that, right? So, yeah.
So your approach has been much more about the appreciation. It's something that you want to buy, you want to improve, and then you want to sell for a gain.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give us a little bit of a breakdown of your kind of analytics on this? And I understand that this could be a total rabbit hole. We can't get into absolutely every cell of the spreadsheet. But like, if you're looking at two deals, deal A, deal B, and in your mind, deal A is a go, deal B is not a go, it's a red light. In terms of like first principles thinking, you can be really archetypal with your answer here, really high level with your answer here. Why is deal A a go and deal B is not a go?
Okay, so something we haven't talked too much about yet, but there's investing your personal cash, like your own personal wealth, and investing business wealth. And so, investing personal wealth into, especially here in Canada, where I don't know how the tax laws work, throughout North America, but where we are here in Canada, we're able to buy a piece of land or buy a home. We're able to improve the asset, and we're able to sell it and get a tax-free gain. Right. So the metrics that you're using when you're doing that are going to be a little bit different than when you're trying to do it as a business. Right.
Correct.
So, you're going to use your personal finances. You're going to get a personal mortgage, and you're going to go from there. And the real win there is that you don't pay any taxes. Right. So, if you're doing it as if you work as a business, every dollar that you make, you're going to pay business tax, and then you're also going to pay a income tax. And depending on where you sit on the income tax ladder, you're going to be paying anywhere from sort of 30 to 50% on every dollar that you're earning, right? So I would strongly suggest for those that are early on in their careers and where your lifestyle allows, to utilize the opportunity to take your personal asset, improve it, flip it. There are regulations around how often you can do that, but I strongly suggest that you do that. When it comes to a business, again, it's totally different. And a lot of times, what's going to dictate what you're doing in business is going to come down to, what kind of financing you can get through a bank. Right. So on the buy, build, and sell model, typically for us as developers, we need to satisfy the bank's return on cash requirement, which is a 15% return on cost, not cash, on cost. Right. So, if you're going to buy a piece of land or even, a home and renovate it, if you buy a house, say it's an $800,000, fixer-upper, you're going to have to put, I don't know, say $300,000-$400,000 into fixing it up. And this might be something that you're doing as a business, or, maybe you're doing it after hours with your brother-in-law. I don't really know how you're doing it, but if you're doing it as a business, you spend $1 million or $800,000 on the home itself, you put $400,000 into it, it's $1.2 million. Let's say you can sell that asset for, $1.5 million once it's all done. And let's just say that, the real estate fees and commissions and everything are included in that $400,000 worth of cost. So, we're 800 plus, what did I say, 800 plus 400. So we're 1.2, we're selling it for 1.5. We got a $300,000 profit, right? So $300,000 of profit on a $1.2 million investment. You do the math, but whatever that is,
25%.
It's going to work out for you. So, but you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're calculating the costs and the risks right up front, right? So, I mean that's the buy, build, and sell model. Then there's also the cash flow model, and so whatever you're doing with cash flow, it's really important that you have a model of some sort, and there's different resources out there that can help you kind of figure that out. But a model that will help you put together a cash flow for a piece of land prior to actually buying it, right? So put that together, and if you can get that thing to cash flow, above say 10%, you're going to do pretty well with it. And the banks will actually look at that asset when you're trying to finance, another home, right? So if you buy one, fix it up, rent it out, refinance it, you can do it again if it cash flows properly. And before you know it, you got 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more properties. And again, coming back to that operating business thing, like if you have a good operating business, you may need to put some cash into those homes in order to make it work. But I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot better investment doing that than putting it into RSPs or 401ks.
Is it the case that more cash flow model, which is more or less like landlording? I'm going to buy a place. I might add a little bit of. They'll call this the Burr method, right? It's like buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. This is directly from Bigger Pockets. I think this is a pretty well understood framework. Most people would be familiar with it. Is it the case that way of going about it is a lot easier in less inflated markets? Like it seems to be much more available in the States. Here in Canada, it's like the spreadsheets just don't work. Like the prices have just gone so ballistic and ballooned to a level that's totally inconceivable. Like this idea that I'm going to buy a place, I'm going to fix it up a little, I'm going to put a tenant in it. It's like you might do all that stuff, and the thing still costs you $500 a month because the rent can't match the cost of the lending.
Well, I mean, for the most part, I think you're right there. The difference is not necessarily Canada versus the U.S. I think the real difference is just the markets. And if you look at house prices on a map, and you look at the prices between cities that are on the water, or on the East Coast or the West Coast,
versus the ones in the middle.
Ones in the middle. I mean, that's a real differentiator, right? So if you go to whether it be Vancouver, Canada, or Toronto, Canada, or New York, or Miami, compared to and San Francisco, compared to something in the central United States, it's going to be a whole lot different. So it's not necessarily Canada, U.S. It's really the proximity of the home to water. Mm-hmm. And do what you want with that, because that might also apply to some cities that have really nice lakefront views or
whatever
other attractions.
Yeah. So okay, it's a good comment. When you look at this sort of I want to buy a place, I want to improve it, I want to sell it for more than I bought it for model, and you've brought up this idea of sweat equity, meaning I can add value to this asset at a faster and more efficient rate than the market can add value should I invest it there. We're making a few assumptions, but let's just say they're right. In the add sweat equity model, in your experience looking at residential homes, this is just a good little use case. What boosts value? Is it kitchens? Is it bathrooms? Is it adding a garage? Is it paint jobs? Is it new flooring? Is it landscaping? I actually don't know. I'm really curious, like what your sense of like what the most cost efficient value boosters are in someone that's trying to do this home flipping model. Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that I'll say, like it doesn't matter what you do to the home if the house is in a bad location, right? So first thing, what do they say? The number one rule in real estate is location. The number two rule is location. Number three rule is location, and so on and so forth. So just make sure that whatever you do, you buy a home that's in a good location. So, and that could be, proximity to amenities, or making sure you're not buying a home where, the wrong type of people have moved into the neighborhood, because it doesn't matter what you do to that home to fix it up, it's not going to sell. Right. So make sure you buy in a good location. Google actually has such a thing called a walk score now. Like it's actually pretty easy to get data fairly quickly online on whether or not your home is in a good location, proximity to schools, amenities, hospital, to employment, highway, all sorts of different things. So figure that one out first. Second of all, when it comes to actually improving a home, there's the classic, make sure that the kitchen and the ensuite look good, right? Because, if you walk into a home, husband and wife walk in there, typically, they're going to look at that kitchen and that ensuite and say, hey, I can either live with this or I can't, right? So, starting there, and from there, like, whenever I look at a home, I always want to look and make sure that the bones of the home are good, right? Like structurally, it's good, making sure that, there's no major issues that you're going to encounter along the way. Because, most people buying homes nowadays are pretty sophisticated. Most of them are using, home inspectors. Some people think, I just got to cover it up and nobody will notice, but they'll typically find out, right? So, kitchen, bathroom. I see a lot of people updating the roof, updating the siding, those sorts of things. I hear a lot of people are like, oh, you got to update the windows and you got to update the doors, and while there's some validity to that, you can start to spend a lot of money on some stuff that doesn't actually really matter that much to the purchaser or the potential purchaser of that home. Paint goes a long way, right? So,
is there anything that you would categorize to sort of flip the question around? Like, are there any things, upgrades to the home where you're just like, I would never do that? Like, it's just not something you're going to get your money back from.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I can't think of anything off the top that you would get no value from, right? I think when you are making decisions on what to spend your money on and what not to spend your money on, like, I would advise working with a real estate professional, right? Like, often we have our own sort of,
bias
pet projects, and you might think that it adds a ton of value. And if you're not sure, just ask someone, ask a real estate broker and say, hey, you know what? If I spend, $15,000 on renovating the windows, for example, will I get $15,000 in value from that, right? So, maybe you're a big TV guy and you think you need to have a theater.
Huge TV, or you're a big rock garden guy, so you install a $100,000 waterfall in the background. The backyard. You're probably not. That's probably not going to work its way out in the end transaction. You're likely going to get caught holding the bag on some of these things.
In markets where finances are tight, which is most markets right now, if you're buying something and you're able to put a suite in it, that's, in addition to the kitchen and the bathrooms, that's actually probably the most valuable thing you can do, especially if you're buying it so that you can hold it and rent it. If you could rent a home out for, $1,500 and you could put a suite in it, you can probably increase that rent to, $2,200, $2,300 or more.
Here's another question about, in cost sensitive markets, which are pretty much all markets right now. I think a lot of people find themselves in a situation early on in their career where their business is making more than, they need to pay their mortgage and do their shops at Costco and do a trip to Mexico. Like, their basic needs are met. There's a little bit of a surplus. How would you coach people to think about this question? Do I take that surplus and I pay my personal mortgage off as quickly as possible so that I can then start at, I can then refill the cash reserves to go do something else? Or the other option is, I'm just going to pay the minimum on my mortgage. It's going to do what it's going to do. We'll stretch this out to 25 years. And I'm going to actually build up a cash reserve over here so that I can actually go and invest faster. I mean, I know there's a lot of variables there, but how would you coach people to think through that?
Well, so in that situation, so we're talking like our basic needs are met. We're not, scratching by anymore. The goal becomes, how do I get as much money, how much of my corporate dollars into my jeans, right? And so, every state, every province is going to have different tax laws. For me, in order to pay my personal mortgage, I need to use personal dollars in order to do that. So I have to pay tax, on my, income tax, to do that. So what I would recommend, if you can, with your mortgage payment, for example, doubling up on your mortgage payment, your monthly mortgage payment, paying it, I think it's every 2 weeks or bi-monthly. I would look at, when it comes to your mortgage, can I do a top up every year? And so what I would work towards is paying down my mortgage as quickly as I possibly can, and pay as little personal tax as I can, because your asset, your personal asset is for most people, it's going to continue to grow over time. And for a lot of people, their home is a huge part of their retirement savings plan, right? So I would work towards, in that situation, I would work towards paying off my personal mortgage. And from there, you have a couple of different options, right? We talked about RSPs or 401ks. Again, if this is if you have the wealth to do so, you could say, hey, you know what? I want to buy a vacation property and I want to put, my cash into there. And so that becomes another investment for you. And the beauty of that investment is that you can actually use it, right? So I, look at a vacation home and look at its value as it grows over time. And then, think about, hey, I can actually enjoy this, right? Mm-hmm. So that to me would be, a good move. Additionally, another way to do that is so you pay off your personal mortgage and then you work towards, buying an office building where you can, or a warehouse or something like that, where you can actually host your business. And then again, you work off paying that. And all the while you do this, you want to be able to, for me, I want to have the ability to put a line of credit against those assets. Now, I think lines of credit is very valuable for our businesses because they give us a sense of security. They give us, a buffer for difficult times and allow us to sleep a little bit better at night. But a line of credit is also a bit like crack cocaine. Like once you start to use it, you'll start using it more and more and more. And if you're going to use your line of credit a ton, you may as well have a mortgage against your home and pull cash out of it because your line of credit rates are not going to be as good as your mortgage rates. So, I think long term, like we got to think about how do we take the wealth that we've built in our businesses and transition those into our personal lives, and those are a couple of different strategies that I would recommend using.
Is there anything that you can say about that all-important question of extracting pre-tax dollars into post-tax dollars in an efficient way, or is it just too technical and too nuanced and go talk to a tax strategist?
Well, I mean, I definitely would recommend you talk to your accountant or a tax strategist, but I mean, because and Benji, everyone that listens to this is going to have a different rule, depending on where they live, right? Yeah. Like I know in Canada we pay our tax structures, whether Insane. You're an S, in the States it's S corps and C corps, and in Canada we're sole proprietors or we have our own corporations that. For me, being Canadian here, I pay myself the minimum salary that I can in order to take advantage of, my pension and low income tax rates. There's, as business owners, there's some ability to pay our spouses, right? They do have to prove that they are actively involved in the business. And then there's income splitting as well. That's a lot harder now than it used to be. But yeah, you're going to pay yourself a salary, you're going to pay your wife a salary, and then on top of that, you're going to have some form of dividends. Yeah. And in terms of the amounts and sort of the specifics there, like you really got to talk to your accountant. Yeah. But I recommend talking to your accountant.
Yeah, those are dollars well spent. I know their time is expensive, but over the long haul, some of this stuff can really get you ahead. What are your thoughts on short-term rentals? Just, I know it's kind of a bit of an out there question, but should those be an appealing thing for people to look at, or is this, maybe more of a trend investment that's hit its peak and is on the way down?
Well, I mean, a short-term rental can be an awesome investment. You have to look into this, but I'm pretty sure where we are here in the province of British Columbia. And so if we're doing it here, this is probably going to happen in other places as well. Like Airbnb is no longer an option depending on where you live. So it's a great option. If you can do it, if you're allowed to do it, because you can generate a lot of, income through those rentals, pays off the mortgage, the cash flows, you're building your asset, pool. But I just would be really careful where you are. Make sure you understand the type of government that's in control. And I forget what the number is, but very shortly here, our ability to do that here in Vancouver and
is over
here in the Fraser Valley is going to be diminished.
think they've made a couple. I mean, this isn't relevant for all of our listeners in the States and stuff, but they've made a couple exemptions in a few metropolitan centers where they do get a lot of tourism. But it doesn't matter. The point is, it's quite fascinating at the stroke of a pen, a small policy decision, how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of short-term investment or STR investors, I should say, are just kind of sitting there like with their hands in the air going, what? Like, I spent this much to buy this thing and now you're telling me I can't? It's just, it's a humbling moment, I think, to realize how powerful some of the powers that be are, and you are left scrambling to figure, what to do now with this 4-bedroom house you bought in Penticton or whatever. It's wild.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anything else you would say about finding success? I mean, okay, our listeners are going to be dotted all over the map. There's going to be some guys in Toronto. There's going to be some contractors in Seattle. There's going to be some contractors in Kansas. They're all over, and they'd be in all different types of markets. You and I both live and operate in an extremely inflated one here in British Columbia. Is there any commentary you'd give around finding success in what feels just like where the floor is so high, the cost to get in is already so high? I mean, I have friends in Texas who, can buy a ranch for $480,000. I have friends in Saskatoon who own, small low rises for under $1 million. It's just like the numbers just don't make sense to us here in these really expensive markets. Do you have any commentary, any wisdom for how to find success where the prices are already really, really high?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason why the prices are really high in places like Vancouver and Toronto and New York and San Francisco and these different places is because these cities are really attractive to live in, and their values continue to improve, right? So you can go buy, a home in Springfield, Missouri, or Edmonton, Alberta, and you can buy that ranch for I don't know what you would pay for a single family home here in Vancouver. The problem is that asset most likely won't increase in value. It actually might even decrease in value if you take inflation into the mix. Whereas if you buy in these more expensive markets, they typically outperform these other markets because people just naturally want to live there. And I got some advice from a long-term investor guy here in Vancouver years ago, and he says to me, he's like, when it comes to where you buy, you want to make sure that you buy on the highest point of the island. When the flood comes and the markets change, and they do, inevitably markets will come and go and there will be challenges, you want to make sure that you stay dry. You want to make sure that your asset is as well protected as it possibly can be. So while it can be difficult to get in to these expensive markets, as far as investments, they stand the test of time, right? And they continue to improve in value, and they continue to increase. And I think, as whether it be a young person or someone who's just trying to get into the market right now, we have to think through things a little bit differently, right? If we want to own a home, how are we going to do that? Are we going to do that on a single income?
Probably
unless
not.
You've got, probably not. So, you might want to think it through. Well, how can I do this with a group of people? Maybe you're married and you've got a brother who's also married, and it's like, hey, let's take our incomes, let's take our cash, let's buy something together. Put a 5-year plan together. We're going to renovate it at the same time while we're living there. And, in 5 years, we'll have built up, I don't know, maybe each of you've got $50,000 worth of equity, or maybe more. And then you take that, maybe you do it again, and then eventually you can get to the point where you can have something of your own. So, I mean, we just got to be a little bit more creative with how we do it. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's a bad investment. I'd actually strongly caution, investing in markets where home value appreciation is low. There's definitely markets out there where home value appreciation is under inflation, right? So if you think about it, you buy it and you sell it 10 years later, you've actually lost money. So, and there's also, you got to think through, there's taxes associated with buying and selling land. There's real estate commissions associated with it. So there's a number of different things that you really want to take into account when you're, moving and flipping properties.
Justin, how has becoming a sophisticated real estate investor over the years actually made your business game better? I mean, you would kind of think of these in two different avenues. One is investment, one is, strategy and operations and leadership, but I think they're kind of tied to each other. Have you reflected on how, just going through these deals year over year over year has actually improved your business tool belt too?
Well, we talked about the vertical integration of the investment and what I do, right? So simply for me, building the product that I am able to invest in has made me really involved in it, right? We talked about being able to add value. As a business, if I'm able to add value to a product that's going to sell either to, that I'm going to sell myself or that I'm going to build for another person and that they're going to sell, I'm adding value or I'm learning how I can add value for my customers that I'm not, where I'm building for other people, right? So, I mentioned too, right? Like if you have the opportunity to renovate a home that you're going to move into yourself, you're going to learn a whole lot of things about a home and why it's built the way that it is, right? So, there's definitely that. And I think, also, trying to add value to our employees, right? So, for us, we're constantly, one of the big goals for most young people as they're coming up in their career is home ownership, right? So we're able to create opportunities for young people that are, looking to buy homes, right? So we have a pretty good understanding of where the market is, how much they should pay, where they should buy, what are the deals. So we have a pretty good handle on that as well. And I think when you're able to help your employees, it creates loyalty as well. So yeah, and I don't know, we're helping people build life skills, right? Teaching people how to maintain and build homes for themselves is something that sometimes we as contractors take for granted. So yeah.
This is like you're talking about like what Caliber Projects actually does for its employees.
Yeah.
In terms of the skill development, the critical thinking, like helping them get into the market. That's something that you really take pride in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, real quick, Benji, I know it's not necessarily part of this topic, but we practice open book management here at Caliber, and so we're our employees get to see our income statement on a monthly basis, and they're encouraged to come up with ways of either cutting costs or increasing revenue, and these are skills that are really applicable to their own lives as well, right? So we may not think about it this way, but we all have a personal income statement as well, right? Like, cash coming in, whether that be through our paycheck or through some passive income source or who knows what. And then we have our expenses. And, as business owners, I think we have an obligation to help our employees, not just pay them, but also help them to understand how they can stretch the dollars that they do have and how they can, do more with less.
I think it's such an interesting comment. It's a theme that we kind of hit on a lot on this podcast. It's like the duty, the responsibility, the onus of teaching this next generation of tradespeople and youngsters some of the stuff they need to know how to do to navigate in the world today. For better, for worse, is kind of on the backs of small business owners. I mean, I don't think our education system is doing it. It doesn't seem like most households are doing it.
No.
So many young men and women don't have mentors to look up to, and it's. I think there's a real point of pride here that a lot of business owners can take, where it's like if you are investing in training, investing in education, investing in your people, that's a really noble thing to do, because I don't think that many other institutions are doing that for those people. And so it's just I don't know, it's a feel good moment, something to think about. We got to wrap here, Justin, but are there any other like resources, books, things that you would really encourage someone, if you think of a young contractor, 30, 40, like they're working their way through this and they want to take this seriously. What would be, some books, some resources, podcasts, whatever, for them to go and spend some time with?
Yeah. So there's a book, it's called Real Estate Investing in Canada by Don Campbell. I don't, you don't have to be Canadian to get a lot out of it. It's a bit of a read. It's a bit of a bit technical. But if you're looking at, buying homes and, looking at finding homes that are going to be income generating and cash flow, and finding a way to repeat that method. Don's got a great book there. Strongly recommend that. There's a lot of books on financial management, and most of what we're talking about really is financial management. And there's the Wealthy Barber, there's Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's I don't know, you guys probably have tons.
But I would shout out to the guys at Bigger Pockets. They've done a really good job with their podcast and their whole content brand. We've actually tried to emulate a lot of the stuff that they've done here with Contractor Evolution, just on a completely different subject matter. So I think most people listening would be familiar with that brand already, but they're a good place to look. If people want to follow you, follow Caliber Projects, where's the best place to do that, Justin?
The best way to do that would just be through LinkedIn. So we've focused all of our efforts from a social media perspective on LinkedIn. So you can look up Caliber Projects on LinkedIn, or you can look myself up. We have a website, caliberprojects.com. You can come check it out there as well.
I just checked it out. It's great. Lots of video. You guys did a good job with that. Dude, thank you so much for your time. You're a busy guy. I really appreciate you giving us a very holistic, very balanced walkthrough of what is involved, some of the upside, some of the downside, how you look at deals, and just sharing a bit of your story. So thank you so much for your time, Justin. We really appreciate you having you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.